We are back now with, of course, continuing coverage of today's historic election. One of the top issues this year is immigration. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about all the top issues, starting with that one, with former President Trump making this a topic, a centerpiece of his campaign. Let's bring in NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. She's in Washington for us this morning. She has, of course, so smartly covered immigration and broken so many stories for us all throughout this campaign season. Julia, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on a big day. I so appreciate you being with us. Let's start with this big picture here. I mean, immigration has been one of the Trump campaign's main issues from the beginning. And not only that, it's been a top issue for voters. We have seen it so frequently show up quite high in polls when asked, what is the most important issue to you? Vice President Harris has only started to talk real specifically about it in the past month. But first, just tell us, like, where each candidate stands. If each of them were to become president, what do we think happens with the border, with immigration?
You're right, Savannah. It's become a big issue, not just for some Republicans, but really for people from both political parties. The big breakdown and where these two candidates stand is no longer the wall. Even Harris herself has said she may continue some border wall construction, but it has to do with deportations and border security. Trump says that he would try to carry out the biggest deportations force event in American history. He's talking about millions. How exactly he would get the funding or the manpower to carry that out is still up in the air, but that is his big issue he has been campaigning on. You see people holding up signs for mass deportations at rallies. For Harris, it's about a border bill she blames Trump for killing earlier this year when he told House Republicans not to give that a vote. It was a bipartisan negotiated border bill that would have ramped up border security. But we should point out that the Biden administration took a lot of executive actions to implement some of that border security already, making it harder to claim asylum if you cross the border illegally, and that is already brought border numbers down to the lowest point since this administration began.
Julia, I mentioned that we know it's such a priority for voters. We've seen that show up in polls time and time again. But just put some context around that for me and for viewers. How important, where is it ranking, and to which voters does this really matter? Is it something we see show up in certain battleground states?
It's still something, Savannah, that we see Republicans put as a higher priority. Typically, things like the economy or abortion rights stay as a #1 issue for Democrats. But what we have seen is there have been more conversations among Democrats. And I think this is the biggest change I've seen, is that the majority of Americans, no matter which party, do believe that illegal immigrants, people who are living here illegally and have been ordered deported, should be deported from the United States, that they should not have the right to live here illegally. That's been a shift to see the majority of those. We used to be talking about a pathway to citizenship for those people. But a very key caveat of that same poll found the majority of Americans, regardless of party, think that if an undocumented immigrant is part of an American family, in other words, if they have U.S. citizen children or they're married to a U.S. citizen, they should be allowed to stay here and not be broken apart. Something that Trump has not said, that's a category he's not said he would leave alone.
Julia, I wonder if you think that this is a motivating enough issue for Trump voters that they head to the polls, because we know on the Harris side, right, we're hearing from so many voters how abortion is that. We know that she tracks way ahead in polling in terms of her handling of abortion than the former president would. But it's pretty much flipped. It's the inverse there when we talk about immigration. Do you see this as an issue that could help seal the deal for the former president, especially in some battleground states?
I think I'm not the person to talk about sealing the deal, but especially when it comes to galvanizing voters, yes, especially when you look at places like Arizona. I've spoken to people there who say the border has to be closed. These are people who've lost family members to fentanyl that's crossed just within 100 miles of their home state, of where they're living, where we know that there's been an increase in fentanyl coming across the border there into Arizona. They want someone who's going to come through with the most draconian border policies they can come up with to try to shut down the border and keep that from coming through. Now, a lot of the details remain, though, of how Trump would actually carry out some of these plans, especially when it comes to immigrants living inside the United States. Already in places like Chicago, New York, Denver, some of those Democratic mayors even called on the Biden administration this time last year to do more. Those are places where we may be surprised to see voters who actually think this administration should have done more to handle the immigrants that already came into their cities. But those are blue strongholds. And by and large, the Trump voters are looking at him to get their information on immigration. And we have to say, many times over, he has been wrong, saying that sometimes there are 20 million who have crossed into the United States, when in fact, there have been 10 million undocumented immigrants who have crossed under this administration.
Julia Ainsley, thank you so much. Again, your reporting throughout this election cycle has been fantastic and provided so much context for us. And we'll talk to you throughout the day. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.